So this is the question that people ask me a lot. How have you been vegan? 15 years. And I tried to be vegan for 2 years, and at first it was great, and then it didn't really work out for me. So it's not your blood type. That's been thoroughly debunked. It is not your genetics, but it is kind of passed on because what we get from our parents, especially from our mothers, are not just her genes, it's also her biome. You're literally part of her. And also, when your grandmother was pregnant with your mother, the eggs that would become you were inside of her. So you have multi-generations of biome that you have inherited. And so for some people, it's a little bit harder to change this, but for most people, small changes can yield results in 3 weeks, sometimes even less. So it is important to know how we got to our current biome, and I'm going to explain, but it's also important to know that you can change it.
Ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ που ήρθατε. Thank you everyone for coming. Despite this bad weather, we appreciate your being here. We're going to listen to an amazing speech from Sarah. Before that, I'm going to say it in Greek. Θα ήθελα να ευχαριστήσουμε το Ecover για την υποστήριξη της διερμηνείας στην ελληνική νοηματική. Τα προϊόντα καθαρισμού Ecover είναι vegan friendly και παράγονται από βιοδιασπώμενα συστατικά φυτικής προέλευσης. Η Σάρα Brandow είναι διατροφολόγος, ερευνήτρια και vegan entrepreneur από τον Καναδά. Η ειδικότητά της είναι να βοηθάει ανθρώπους να ξεπερνούν προβλήματα υγείας και να θεραπεύσουν το έντερό τους με τη δύναμη των φυτών. Ο τίτλος της ομιλίας της είναι Master your microbiome and heal your guts with plants. Sarah, thank you. We are waiting for you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming on this rainy day, and thank you for coming to a talk in English. My name is Sarah. I don't have a clicker tonight, so I'm going to be reaching over a little bit. But I hope that anyone who's curious about how to eat more plants, how to thrive on a vegan diet, while you might not be thriving with your current diet, get some answers today. So a little background about me. I have a Master's of Science in Nutrition. I have been vegan nearly 15 years, and I lead the nutrition department. I'm the Director of Nutrition at a leading stem cell and regenerative medicine clinic. I'm also a vegan entrepreneur. I have a little passion project in Tulum, Mexico. It is called The Better Donut. It is an organic vegan donut shop. And maybe I'll have one here someday. We'll see. I created a protocol called Master Your Microbiome. And microbiome actually comes from Greek. It is referring to the trillions of tiny little bacteria that live inside of us that control so many things in our lives, including how we digest food, how we feel, how we look, and I'm going to go into more detail. So what is the microbiome? It is trillions of microorganisms weighing 4 to 5 pounds on average. So a huge percentage of us by weight is bacteria. But also, we are actually significantly more bacterial cells than human cells. And so what we feed these bacteria determines so many different aspects of our life. We are full at all times of bacteria, yeast, fungi, viruses, and how we feed these foods, or how we feed these bacteria, these colonies, with certain foods, determine our overall health. These are some of the really obvious ones that are related to the gut microbiome. Your risk of disease can actually be predicted by studying through lab tests how many different colonies of beneficial bacteria live inside you. Your skin, believe it or not, is often related to the inside. So if you have anything from acne to psoriasis or eczema, that is usually related to the gut. Your immune system, if you get sick often, it's probably related to your gut. Your weight, if it's easy for you to maintain a healthy body weight, or if you really struggle, if you feel like you eat one cookie and you gain 5 pounds, it's probably something to do with your microbiome. Performance for athletes. Because of the work I do, we work with a lot of professional athletes, and gut health determines their performance, how quick they recover. And when you're a professional athlete, recovery is your job. You can be the most skilled, but if you take the longest time to recover, you're not going to advance in your career and you're not going to become a pro. So gut health is related to all of these things, but the beauty is we can change it. So if you're looking at these and you think, I need help in a few of these areas, hopefully the information I share today will empower you to make those changes. So there are actual tests that are being done now from laboratories that are called gut bacteria analysis. And so what these tests do is they look to see how many strains you have. So has anyone here heard of the blue zones? These are areas where, yeah, there's one in Greece, areas of the world where the most centenarians live, people living to 100, but not just living, thriving. So they're cognitively functioning, they're active in their communities. These individuals were found to have between 1,200 and over 2,000 strains of bacteria in their gut. The average American has about 500 to 1,000, and the average sick American has less than that. So we have an epidemic of low gut bacterial diversity, and this leads to so many other problems. It is not the single cause of all these problems, but certainly it's a really good place to start. So this is the question that people ask me a lot. How have you been vegan? 15 years. And I tried to be vegan for 2 years, and at first it was great, and then it didn't really work out for me. So it's not your blood type. That's been thoroughly debunked. It is not your genetics, but it is kind of passed on because what we get from our parents, especially from our mothers, are not just her genes, it's also her biome. You're literally part of her. And also, when your grandmother was pregnant with your mother, the eggs that would become you were inside of her. So you have multi-generations of biome that you have inherited. And so for some people, it's a little bit harder to change this, but for most people, small changes can yield results in 3 weeks, sometimes even less. So it is important to know how we got to our current biome, and I'm going to explain, but it's also important to know that you can change it. I had periods where I was thriving on a vegan diet in the beginning. Then I wasn't doing so well, and I had to unpack why that was. I had to realize why some people get food poisoning when you eat the same food and somebody else doesn't. Why some people get really bloated after a meal and other people don't. And it's not as simple as genetics. So there's many other factors involved, and all of them relate to the gut. So lately, there is a really big trend on social media, carnivore diets. And you're probably thinking, if you haven't tried this, that's totally insane. Why would somebody eat only meat? And I'm here to actually explain and sympathize with those people. No one's doing that because they actually think they're a lion, I hope. People are doing that because they're desperate. They're in a really bad state. So if you have never had a diverse microbiome, guess what? You're not going to be great at breaking down plants. I wish that wasn't true, but fortunately, it can be changed. So if you're somebody who, for example, didn't have a good diet as a child, you were consuming a lot of processed foods, fried foods, you were given a lot of childhood antibiotics. Then maybe as a teenager, you ate a lot of fast food. Maybe then you got some acne and you went on Accutane. Maybe you were a woman who went on birth control. Then in university, you came down with some sicknesses, ran to the doctor, got a few rounds of antibiotics, and only 4 rounds of antibiotics in your life can significantly increase your risk of Crohn's disease, colitis, all kinds of inflammatory disorders in the gut. So then maybe you're on some other pharmaceutical, maybe you take an antidepressant, and all of a sudden, you've spent most of your life nuking your microbiome and not enough of your life nourishing it. And all of a sudden, you try to eat a bowl of lentils, you think spinach is trying to kill you, you're bloated, you're gassy, and you blame the plants. And you say, obviously, these foods are the problem. And we don't want to say that the individual is the problem, but let's say that our system is, that society is. A lot of our food, when it arrives to the grocery store, has been rinsed with chlorinated water so that we don't get E. coli and other pathogens on our food. And these harmful bacteria, of course, are not good to ingest, but there's also a prevalence of those bacteria because the soils are sterile. Greece, luckily, has a much better, more localized food system than a lot of other places, so take advantage, shop local, go to little farms whenever you can, go to farmers markets. But the reality is, for most people living in big cities, in most places in the world, their access to the beneficial bacteria that the microbiome needs to break down plants, because we don't break down the plants, what happens is the bacteria produce the enzymes, and they break down the fiber, and then in turn, we get the nutrients. But what happens when that bacteria is missing? You can't digest anything at all, and you go for meat. And temporarily, you get relief. But after a while, you don't feel good on that diet anymore either. and you slowly introduce a few more things and a few more things. And you try to feel better, but you're reacting to an avocado. And that is when it's time, hopefully before that, but that's definitely when it's time for a microbiome reculture. The absolute worst diet that somebody can eat in terms of the gut microbiome is a diet really high in animal fat and really low in fiber. This is not my opinion. I'm a researcher, and this is where the evidence points. So ketogenic diets, carnivore diets, these diets can produce short-term weight loss and short-term relief from inflammation, but long-term, the health outcomes are not good. We like to call this a microbiome starvation diet. So all of those trillions of little bacteria that you need to break down all of the plant matter are being starved if you don't feed them. Whatever you feed is what grows. Whatever you feed is what you cultivate. So if you're eating a really great diet, lots of fiber, lots of plants, you're feeding the good guys. If you're eating a lot of fried foods, processed foods, packaged foods, you're feeding the pathogens. And eventually, over time, your good bacteria will reduce more and more and more as you starve it. So, the bad news that we have no control over most of your microbiome is determined in the first 1,000 days of your life. So, well, first it starts, of course, with what your mother eats while you're in the womb. And studies have shown if the mother eats a lot of leafy greens, the baby's more likely to enjoy leafy greens, but the same goes for chips and soda. So the first 1,000 days of your life, day one, were you a C-section baby or were you birthed vaginally? There's a big difference there in bacteria. Were you given a lot of pharmaceuticals at the hospital? As a child, as a baby, how long were you breastfed for? Were you breastfed at all? Or were you formula fed? If you were formula fed, you also missed out on a ton of bacteria. When you were born, if you were immediately bathed, you also missed out on a ton of bacteria. Then, as a child, did you have enough healthy exposures to the world and to bacteria, or were you extremely sheltered? All of these things make a difference, leading up to, of course, the biggest determinant is early childhood antibiotics. That is the quickest way to leave a resounding negative effect on a child's microbiome. So here is a chart, how to know if you have a balanced gut or not. Now, if you're reading this and you think, oh, I'm mostly on the imbalanced side, then you've got some work to do. But if you're only occasionally on the imbalanced side, then you're doing pretty good. No one has a perfect gut all the time. No one that I've ever met has a perfect gut all the time. Everybody gets bloated sometimes. Everybody has digestive issues sometimes. And that's usually because we don't eat a perfect diet. But the balanced gut side, that's what you want to be aiming for. That's homeostasis. That's how you should be living most of the time. Most of your life shouldn't be spent suffering over food or feeling fatigued or feeling uncomfortable in your own body. So, I gave you a lot of things that were out of your control. Here's the good news. The microbes in your large intestine are extremely sensitive, which means you can change them very quick. The bad guys, luckily for everyone, die off way quicker than the good guys. Has anyone here ever done a fast? Juice, water, oh, a lot of people, that's great. Have you ever gone to the grocery store on a fast? I have, to get on an extended juice fast, which I don't recommend, but it's cool to push yourself sometimes. So I go to the grocery store to buy my celery to juice and my cucumbers, and I'm looking over at the baked goods. And I'm not really a baked good person when it comes to like muffins and cakes and that kind of stuff. I'm a donut girl. But I'm looking over at this muffin, and this muffin looks like the best thing I've ever seen in my life. My bacteria, my parasites were screaming. They were like, eat that muffin. And then I'm looking over at my celery and it doesn't look good. So obviously I'm not hungry, right? Who's communicating to me what to do, what to eat? So I always tell people, don't listen to your gut until you've healed your gut. Because otherwise you're not going to be getting, that wasn't my intuition telling me to eat a muffin. That was my pathogens, my not so good bacteria, making sure that I fed them before they died. And I didn't feed them and they died. But you don't need to go on juice fasts because what you refeed yourself afterwards could send you right back into the same problem. But there is a lot of benefit of controlled fasting, water fasting, if you know what you're doing with supervision, but you don't need to do that in order to fix your gut. I actually made the best strides changing my gut with food. So I mentioned before that individuals with different health conditions, they typically have really low diversity in their gut. But even for a healthy person, we face challenges. There might be a time when you need to go on antibiotics. Maybe there's a time when you're traveling and you're enjoying some spicy margaritas and your diet isn't the best. Maybe you're really stressed for a while. You're not sleeping. Maybe you get food poisoning while traveling. The more you build up your gut health when you're at home in your own environment, the less you have to worry about this stuff. This is just a little blip. But if you're already running on empty, having coffee for breakfast, not eating plants, not sleeping well, going to your high-stress job on no sleep, you are going to live in the state of the imbalanced gut side that you guys just saw. So we don't want that. We want you to prepare for those times when life will for sure throw you curveballs, but when you can, you want to be preparing with all the foods that I'm going to share in a little bit. One thing as well that I like to share about this work, mastering your microbiome, changing your gut, is that it is a very empowering thing to believe that you have control over your own health, to believe that you can make changes that maybe you were told you couldn't. Maybe you thought it's your blood type, your DNA, your genetics, just any aspect that's unchangeable. And I have worked through the job that I have at a regenerative medicine clinic with people who had very extreme cases, who really thought that they were not going to get better. And I've seen miracles, and I know that miracles are possible for everybody, but you have to be empowered. You have to know that miracles are possible for you, that you can change your gut microbiome, that you can change your health, and that you can completely change your life. And it's also not that hard. That's also a very limiting belief I see a lot. Oh, it's going to be too much work. It's too hard. It's not that hard, but there's just a few little things that you have to do. So, one, if you know your gut is not very good, you have to clean up your diet. Take out the obvious stuff that you know is bad for you, the fried foods, the processed foods, especially processed meats. You got to cut the alcohol. That is going to take out both your good and your bad gut bacteria, but the bad guys tend to multiply a little bit quicker when people refeed, and it causes inflammation in your gut, which you don't want. Pharmaceuticals, if you need them, of course, if it's life or death. I'm not advocating for you to stop taking your meds, but if it's something that you don't really need, if you tend to have a headache and go to pop a pill all the time, a lot of headaches actually are linked to the gut microbiome, then you're gonna end up in a state where you're constantly harming the progress that you're making. Drinking water, really simple, but people forget it more than they should. You have to drink a lot of water, especially here. It's very hot. I was here in the summer and I had to pretty much double my water consumption. But if you do that, it is also going to help your microbiome. We require hydration to move things along. Stress levels, you might think, I have a stressful job, I have a stressful home life, I can't change that. But you can change your body's reaction to it. You cannot change the world around you. I wish we could, it would be vegan. But you can change the way you respond. And so that means things that maybe aren't fun, where you sit down and you do some breath work, you do some meditation, you focus yourself, you do some yoga, all of these things, even journaling. Even if you journal a bunch of nothing, I am journaling, why am I doing this? This girl Sarah told me that I had to. They've actually shown that it changes your brain waves and puts your body in a parasympathetic state. So if you have a very active, busy mind and you don't like meditating, I recommend trying breathing exercises or journaling. That's a really good way to shift your body out of that state. So all of the things here feed the not so good bacteria, the pathogenic bacteria, the bad guys. Processed meats, especially hot dogs, deli meats, all that. Hopefully no one here eats that stuff, but if you do, this is your sign. Fried foods, especially fried meats, those also have some carcinogenic compounds as well. So you definitely want to avoid those. Hydrogenated oils, refined sugars and sweeteners, refined grains, and animal products also, they do not feed your beneficial bacteria. Your beneficial bacteria love fiber. So this is how you feed the good guys. If you look at this list and say, I can't digest any of this, do not go to the store and buy it all and put yourself in a really uncomfortable position. I'm going to give you the strategies to slowly get there. But the reality is, this is what the research shows. Fiber from plants for short-chain fatty acids. These are going to lower the inflammation in your gut. Very important. Prebiotic foods. Prebiotics come before probiotics. Prebiotics are the foods that the probiotic bacteria like to eat. So some good examples: onions and garlic, bananas, jicama, if anyone knows what that is. It's delicious. I don't know if you get jicamas here in Greece. They're really popular in Mexico. Oats, flax seeds. I actually have a list on my website, so if anyone wants to take a look, it's free. You can get a whole list of prebiotics, and these are the foods that your good bacteria love. Fermented foods, that's gonna be a big part of my suggestions here. So fermented foods are things like sauerkraut, kimchi, water kefir. Kombucha is one as well, but you have to find one that's not loaded with sugar at the end, because that's gonna undo a lot of the benefits that came from drinking the fermented drink. But pickled things don't count. And the reason why and the difference is that pickled items have vinegar. And vinegar, you can clean your toilet with it because it kills bacteria. But the reason that we are eating the fermented foods is because we want bacteria, but we want good bacteria. We need to go to war with the bad guys gently, more of like a stealth takeover than an all-out war. And you need to slowly push them out. And the way that probiotic fermented foods work, it's a really simple mechanism of action. Quite simply, you only have so much space in your gut. They outcompete the pathogens, they're stronger, and they win. And now that space is theirs. Legumes and beans are next on the list. The gut loves those. So if anyone tells you that these foods are full of anti-nutrients and they're trying to kill you like other plant foods, that person does not read the literature. That person is not familiar with what the science actually says on the gut and what our gut bacteria love. Finally, nuts and seeds and polyphenols. Polyphenols are antioxidant-rich foods that not only feed the good bacteria, but they actually fight the pathogens, the bad bacteria. And polyphenols are in things like berries, cherries. Oh. Okay, so I talk a lot about the gut microbiome, but we actually have a bunch of them. So the one I'm going to talk about now is the oral microbiome. I've noticed a trend in Greece. Everybody has those little cigarette/vapes. It's like I don't know, it's like a cigarette, but also in a vape. And there's a misconception that this isn't as bad as smoking, or that vaping isn't as bad as smoking, but guess what? Your oral microbiome, like your gut microbiome testing, can determine with a high degree of accuracy your risk of heart disease and many other health conditions. So a really well-trained specialist can look in your mouth and tell you how likely you are with a high degree of accuracy to have a heart attack based on what's going on in your mouth. And so all the smoking is absolutely not helping that. Even if it's a little bit better than a conventional cigarette, it is not helping your oral microbiome. Also, really chemical mouthwashes, like some of the major brands. These are full of artificial colors, artificial dyes, alcohols. You don't want to wipe out your beneficial bacteria in your mouth with that. Eating a lot of junk food, not good for the bacteria in your mouth. And just the overconsumption, I should say, of alcohol. If you have a little wine here and there, it's not going to destroy your oral microbiome, but overconsumption of alcohol absolutely will. So these are the different microbiomes, and these are all linked to the gut because that's where most of your bacteria is coming from. So in addition to the oral microbiome, we have the skin microbiome. And that's why it's so important to look at everything you're putting on your skin. So there's this app I use. It works pretty well in Greece, but there's some products that aren't on there. I'm not affiliated with them. I just think it's cool. It's called Yuka, Y-U-K-A. And I take it out and I can scan the barcodes of products and they will tell you how toxic they are. There's also a free database called Skin Deep from the Environmental Working Group, if you Google it, and that will also tell you which products are safe and which products are toxic. But everything we put on the skin gets absorbed through the body. Women actually tend to have higher loads of toxins in their body because they tend to use more beauty products and historically. It's kind of changing now, thankfully. Women used to do most of the cleaning as well. And a lot of cleaning products are extremely toxic. Then you have your lung microbiome, the next thing that the smoking will destroy. And after your gut, your lung microbiome has the second greatest volume of bacteria. So you want that because that is necessary for your immune system. Then we have the reproductive microbiome. So this affects everything from how you smell down there, if you're prone to yeast infections, if you're prone to bladder infections through the urinary microbiome. All of these things, believe it or not, are linked to your gut. And that's also good because it means any of these things can be changed. This one as well, I love to share with people. Whoever you share a bed with, you share a microbiome with. So please don't sleep with your pets. Any bacteria that comes in, especially from pets being outside, not washing their feet, then they bring it into the bed. Pets also typically are eating a worse diet than humans. So if you're feeding your pets kibble, this might also apply. And the pet microbiome will be shared with you, just like whatever partner you choose to share a bed with will also be shared with you. Studies have shown that some people actually have sexual attraction for individuals with the same parasites as them. So really good reason to keep your gut clean so you can make good choices. Okay, this is another one. So anyone who knows me and who's ever been to my house knows that the quickest way to lose me as a friend is to walk into my house with shoes on. Because this is one of the best ways to track the most disgusting dirt and pathogens and feces and everything else from outside. Now, you do want to have some exposures to bacteria and to dirt, not from the bottom of people's shoes who live in a dirty city. So as a child, you really wanted to be exposed to like a healthy amount of bacteria. Not too much, not too little, ideally from soil. And if you're exposed to a little bit too much, like with food poisoning, if you don't have the antagonist bacteria to fight it, you get sick. So if you're working on your gut health, you're trying to get healthier, and also you're not gross, do not wear your shoes in the house. This is a way that doesn't involve food, that is free, that you can start reculturing your gut microbiome. You literally just have to touch dirt. You have to get a little garden. Put your hands in the dirt, play with it, and ideally plant some food to eat as well. Food that is from a local garden, a small farm, your neighbors, your backyard, is not going to have that chlorine rinse that I mentioned. And also, it's going to have more nutrients. About 30% to 40% of nutrients are lost in the first few days where food is shipped from the farm to the grocery store. And actually, frozen food sometimes, if it's off-season, has way more nutrients because it was frozen at peak freshness. So don't be afraid of getting some frozen berries and things that are out of season, some frozen cauliflower and broccoli, because they're still going to have a lot of nutrients in there, but less enzymes. So have a little bit of something raw with your cooked food, like a side salad. Reduce your chemical exposures. All of these things that most people are cleaning their house with are affecting the skin and the gut microbiome. They are destroying bacteria indiscriminately. Good guys gone, bad guys also gone, but there are so many options for non-toxic cleaning products on the market. So we can really, really cut back on chemical exposures just by changing what we clean our homes with. And as I mentioned before, this is my #1 suggestion to changing your gut. This is how I see people get the greatest and quickest results. You touch the bacteria, yes, but more importantly, I want you to eat it, but the good bacteria. So learning how to ferment your own foods is the easiest and one of the most valuable skills. It was a skill that a lot of our grandparents used to have, and maybe some of our parents still do. I'm from Canada, so I had an Italian family who had a huge pantry of all kinds of canned things. So home canning, I mean, not in a can, like this. And so I was fortunate enough to grow up with a lot of that. And a lot of people have never eaten a fermented food in their life. So if you don't have that backyard garden, if you're not getting the fresh soil, the fresh food, this is how you get your bacteria. One of my favorite fermented foods to make that is so easy, people have their kids doing it, is to get 1 beet, chop it up, put it in a jar, Fill the jar with water, put in 1 teaspoon of sea salt, and seal it. I also like to add ginger to be fancy, but that's it. Seal it, let it sit for at least a week. You can let it sit for months, but if you let it sit longer than about 10 days, you gotta burp it. And all that means is you just open the lid a little till it goes, and then you close it again. And that means that when you open it down the line, it won't explode on you. But that's really it. That is the easiest fermented food to get started with. A beet in water with some sea salt, seal it. That's it. And when you go to drink the liquid, it's like a fizzy, sugarless beet soda. But this soda, unlike the other stuff, has so many beneficial bacteria that will start to reculture your microbiome, to push out those pathogens, and to help you begin your journey of really great gut health. And it is so cheap, it is so easy. There is no probiotic pill that works as well as this stuff. There isn't. And I think that these strategies aren't spoken about enough because you can't patent them. They're ancestral knowledge. You can't make a lot of money off of them. They're in glass, they're expensive to ship across the world. You can't make a big business out of it. But this is truly the most impactful thing you can do. Now, if you have an autoimmune disease, if you have a really bad gut, if you're someone who reacts to everything, then these are gonna be a little high histamine for you. So you have to go really slow. You have to baby yourself. Couple spoonfuls if you're a very sensitive individual. If you don't react in a week, couple more. And slowly, slowly, slowly increase. I am at the point now where I eat a lot of fermented foods, but I had to go slow. So I like, for example, the beet drink that I just told you about, or things like water kefir, because you can only chew so much in a day, but you can drink a lot more. So if you make the beets where it's mostly liquid in the jar instead of filling it with beets, then you can drink that. And that's a way to quickly increase the amount of beneficial bacteria you take in without having to overwhelm your system with a ton of fiber if you don't digest fiber really well. So your gut also determines how often you get sick. So building resiliency isn't only to look better and feel better and to digest food better and to get more nutrients, but you get another bonus as well. Your immune system improves and you are less likely to get sick. So 70 to 80%, I've even seen in one study up to 84%, so the science isn't totally solid, but at least 70% of the cells that make your immune system, your resilience, live in the gut. So this is an example of a poor woman who's not feeling very well, but as you can see, she's got some items on the table in front of her. So she's got a nasal decongestant that she's spraying to unblock her nose. She's got some lozenges, some drops. Well, those nose sprays, those eye drops, those lozenges are, unfortunately, while providing temporary relief, harming all these little microbiomes that you need to keep you healthy. So unless you really need it, I don't advise running to the pharmacy for every little ailment. Of course, if you need it, that's different. But if it's not necessary, if you're just looking for a little more comfort, it will come at the expense of your long-term gut health. All pharmaceuticals have an impact on the gut, every single one. I mentioned this before, but I'm going to mention it again because this is the cheapest and easiest way to make a really big difference. I have worked with a lot of people who have complained of brain fog, exhaustion, constipation, poor digestion, they don't like their skin, and I look at how much water they're drinking, and we don't even need to fix anything else. That's actually the only problem that they had. But people tend to underestimate how much they need. When you are sweating constantly, you're losing water and you're losing minerals. So if it's a really hot, sweaty day here, take a little pinch of a really high-quality sea salt, dissolve it in the mouth first with just a little bit of water, and then drink water after. That will help to rehydrate you, to keep the water in, and to keep your minerals in. I mentioned the short-chain fatty acids before as well. So someone told me that they have chronic inflammation and they don't want to exercise because exercise causes inflammation, which is true, but there's two different types. There is acute inflammation. This happens when you work out. This happens when you stub your toe, when you hurt yourself. The body has an immune response that is going in there to protect you. We also have chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation, unlike acute, is not an emergency sudden response. This is a slow one. This lasts for days, weeks, months, years. I've seen decades. And people start to believe that that chronic inflammation is their natural state. But that is a result of a multitude of different choices that lead people to believe that any additional inflammation, even from exercise, is going to make it worse. So I recommend, in whatever capacity you can, moving your body. Even if it's a quick walk, even if you can't move your legs, you move your arms, or vice versa. Anything you can do to get some movement in your body, that will make a really big difference on your gut health, believe it or not. It's all impacted. So move your body in whatever way you can. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. You don't have to run 5K your first day, but every little bit. This is a huge thing that I want to emphasize. A little bit of fermented foods, a little bit more water, a little bit of exercise. These are the keys to health. People don't get healthy pushing themselves really far. People don't get healthy doing extreme things. I had someone message me on Instagram, and he said, "What is your favorite kidney detox?" So, first of all, I want to know why someone would need a kidney detox. If your organs are functioning correctly, you don't need to detoxify individual organs. And if you do, a lot of people have this habit of, okay, what pill can I take? What herbal remedy can I take if they want to be healthier to solve this problem? And it's that same mentality of attack, attack, attack. My body's not doing what I want. I'm going to attack it. I'm going to take all these things. I'm going to kill the parasites. I'm going to blast out whatever my kidneys are not doing for me. And I ask people, when was the last time you tried to get healthy by loving yourself? By going to bed early, by moving your body, by drinking water, by eating plants, by telling your body that you love it and making changes because you love it, not because you hate it and it's not doing what you want, when you've probably never taken care of it that well. And so moving in any capacity you can is going to be very important to making those little changes. This is another one. It's free. For some people, this is the hardest one of all. You have to chew. Your microbes are microscopic. So no matter how good your diet is, if you don't chew that fiber, good luck getting nutrients from it. So if you're not thriving on your plant-based diet, but you tend to eat while you're on your laptop, on your phone, watching TV, talking to someone, that's not a good idea. You're literally robbing yourself of nutrients. You're not going to get all of them. So you have to chew your food to a mush. And so that's why have dinner with, someone that they can speak while you chew, have a good conversation, be present, have dinner at a cafe and don't have your phone on you. Have dinner at home by yourself and make a conscious decision that you're not going to scroll, you're not going to watch, you're not going to do anything else. Talking does not disrupt digestion, but being in a high-stress sympathetic mode does. So what I mean by that, our nervous system has two modes. Parasympathetic mode, which is resting, digesting, relaxing. Sympathetic mode, which is fight, flight, and freeze. Most people spend a huge portion of their day in sympathetic mode. They're drinking coffee, they're running around, they're stressed, they're scrolling on Instagram, which is dopamine, dopamine, dopamine. And then when they go to eat, afterwards, they're like, why am I bloated? My digestion's not working. But you're not really giving it the tools to work. So you mostly want to eat in parasympathetic mode. If you're having a really stressful, busy day, and you're about to sit down, you're like, okay, I've got my healthy lunch, I drank water, I've got to chew, but my heart is racing. What can I do? Breathing exercise. So we can all do it right now. Breathe in for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Release. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold with it out. 1, 2, 3, 4. That was easy, right? That's all you have to do. If you're really stressed, do it a few times. That's called box breathing. 4, 4, 4, 4. This technique works to calm your nervous system before anything you need to do that is stressful, but it's a really great tool to snap your body out of sympathetic mode, become present, and get ready to digest your food. Calming your nervous system before eating is the key to tackling bloating, especially if you're somebody who's super high cortisol. If you skip breakfast and you have coffee for breakfast, probably you have a bloating issue. been there. Most people have been there, but especially for women, actually. Women are more sensitive. Women are more sensitive to skipping breakfast. Women don't do well fasting and working out after. Actually, women do better eating a little bit first. Men can get away with a little bit more, but female hormones are more delicate because when they sense danger, they don't want a baby. But what happens is you don't only have the effect of not being able to get pregnant. All of the hormones can go a little out of whack when the body's not being treated properly and when you're really, really stressed. So I'm going to talk briefly about the gut and mental health. Now, I say this as someone who is an avid researcher in this topic because it interests me, but I am not a mental health professional, and I do not want to take a very multifaceted area and just downplay it and say, if you fix your gut, all these things will go away. That's not what I'm saying. What I want to say is that making these changes is an amazing first step to supporting yourself on whatever journey you take. But if you're somebody who suffers from anxiety, depression, other mental health related conditions, eating a very healthy, balanced diet can't do anything but help. So it's a really good place to start. The reason that these things are connected is through something called the gut-brain axis. So your gut and your brain communicate to each other. You ever had a gut feeling? You get a little nervous, anxious, or intuition. You get a good feeling. And you say, oh, that comes from the gut. Unfortunately, if you have a lot of parasites, that can negatively affect the gut-brain axis. If you have a lot of pathogenic bacteria, that can negatively affect the gut-brain axis. So if you know that maybe your diet isn't the best, and subsequently your mental health isn't the best, a really good place to start is with some of the strategies that I suggested. The box breathing, the fermented foods, eating more colorful foods, and being very, very gentle with yourself. We need healthy gut microbes to get the nutrients from food. So I explained before really briefly, but I have to say this one again because it's really important. You could have an amazing vegan diet and you can still feel like crap if your gut is in a really bad place. And so that's why if you want to thrive on a vegan diet, you now can learn all the things that I learned and you can help yourself to thrive. But even your memory, if you think, I used to have such a good memory, I don't remember things anymore. Probably that's related to your gut. If you think, oh my gosh, I find it so hard now to stay in a good mood, and I used to be known as being the happiest person. I used to love to read, and I barely want to pick up a book anymore because I don't remember what it says. Changing your gut can have a ripple effect through all these different areas in your life. Serotonin, the happy hormone, 90 to 95% of it is created in the gut. So obviously, there's going to be an impact there, not only on your mood, but all these other things. So we actually need serotonin to heal wounds. If you're somebody that gets a cut and it doesn't heal very quickly, bruises, it could actually be your serotonin levels. So there's more reasons to really, really do this work, to make these changes, and to start healing your gut. It will change so much more than just your mood. If your gut isn't very good and you want to quickly feel better, all of these things work as well, and they're free. Meditation is actually known to increase serotonin levels. Having a daily routine, this one can be really tough for people because you work really hard during the week, and on Friday and Saturday night, you want to go out, you want to sleep in the morning, but your gut bacteria doesn't know that it's Friday night and you had a tough week. Your gut bacteria is wondering why you're staying up really late, drinking cocktails, sleeping in the next day, skipping breakfast, skipping workout. So humans are very simple. We thrive on routine. It's not always going to be perfect, but if you know that you're somebody who needs to make some changes, if you're not thriving, if you're not feeling great, this is the time to show yourself the ultimate self-love by being really strict with your daily routine. Laughter also increases serotonin, and it's free. Watch a funny movie, hang out with friends that make you laugh. That is a great way, and that serotonin boost lasts for a while. So every day, try to find something that makes you laugh. Try to find that person or that show that puts you in a good mood, and that's free serotonin. Getting out in the sun, you're very lucky. You don't live in a gloomy climate. Free. Physical activity, even if you can't do a lot, every little bit counts. And like I mentioned, with the daily routine, the consistent sleep and wake times, but also consistent eating times. Your gut bacteria also can control your circadian rhythm. So if you're always eating at different times, you might get hungry late at night, you might want to crave foods at certain times that are not ideal. So when you're on your healing journey, that is not the time to be flexible with your lifestyle. It's the time to really, really be strict, and you don't have to do it for long. You can make changes really quick. So when you're under a lot of stress, it's not just your digestion that's affected. You actually, unfortunately, have toxins that your gut bacteria will release to make everything worse. And these are gonna make you crave different foods and make you not feel so great. So, as I said before, there's a lot of stress that you are going to have no control over in your life. But you can use these techniques. Get your journal, write down whatever comes into your brain. Do your box breathing, go to a yoga class, sit in a corner and just breathe. And all of these things will have physiological evidence-based changes that will change these stress hormones, that will put you at a lesser risk of these toxins, and that will make your healing journey a lot easier. The body heals the best when it's in parasympathetic mode. When we're in sympathetic mode, drinking coffee, running for our lives, it feels like your body's using so much energy to pump these stress hormones, cortisol, epinephrine. That takes work, and that is energy that is being directed away from healing and repairing your cells. So, to wrap it up, this is my suggestion for the things you can do right now to make the biggest change. Number one, fermented foods every single day. Every day, eat something fermented. If you aren't comfortable making it yourself, then no problem. Go to the grocery store, go to a little health food store. But what you want to look for when you're buying it are the words raw or wild ferment. And what that means is it wasn't pasteurized, they didn't use a probiotic starter culture, it hasn't been cooked. It's just the veggie, the salt, and the water. And that is going to give you a nice little boost. Water kefir as well is one that I really like, but like kombucha, make sure that it doesn't taste that good, unfortunately. If it tastes delicious, if it tastes so good, it's probably not doing the trick. The best kombucha actually is a little bit vinegary. Number two, eat a variety of plants. Research has shown that people with the best gut microbiomes are averaging 30 different plants per week. Now, that might sound crazy, but actually, if you get out your little notes app in your phone, and every time you eat a plant, you write it down, you might be surprised. I've gotten like 15 in a salad before. I had 4 different kinds of leaves. I made a salad dressing, blending up some tahini, some lemon, some cayenne pepper. I had a few different veggies in there, some nuts and seeds, fig, pomegranates. It's actually really, really easy. And then all of a sudden, you can maybe challenge yourself after a few months of doing this to get to 50. But if you don't digest foods really well, don't jump into that. If you are somebody who is, coming off of a carnivore diet or a super restricted diet, start with 3 plants per week. Start with the tiniest little nibble of spinach, the tiniest little bit of avocado, just something to start feeding those bacteria, and eventually they will catch up. But I can guarantee that if anyone has any health conditions, you did not create that health condition in a week. You're probably not going to escape from it in a week, but you can feel better very, very quickly. Every little change really makes such a difference. The body wants to heal. The body wants to be in homeostasis. And so all we have to do is create the right conditions and it will do its job, but you have to believe that and you have to trust. So my final one, this is really easy too. When you're having your cooked food, eat something raw with it to get some enzymes. So the best suggestion, of course, some fermented foods, a little bit of sauerkraut or kimchi with whatever you're eating. But you can also, if you're busy, munch on a cucumber, have a little side salad, anything to just get a little bit of raw, because raw food has more enzymes than cooked. So with some things like, for example, tomatoes, you get different nutrients when they're cooked versus raw, more lycopene when you cook them. But you want to get both. You want to get the enzymes too. So try your best to have something raw with your cooked food. And this is the take-home message, that I want everyone to feel super empowered, that you can change your gut health. Whatever your diet is, if you want to eat more plants, if you want to feel better on your vegan diet, if you want to heal your skin, if you want to have more energy, a better mood, if you just want to wake up feeling good again, feeling like you used to, you have all the power to do that. So follow the suggestions that I gave, start with the small ones, And focus on your health. Don't focus on what's wrong. Don't wake up every day tracking your symptoms. Track your progress. I went for a longer walk today. I laughed a little more today. I ate 2 fermented things today. And over time, everything will change for you, but it changes very, very slowly. The beauty of fermented foods and changing your gut is that you actually can't do it quick. If you try to overdose, you're gonna end up on the toilet having a really bad time. So the body actually forces you to go really slow and to nurture yourself the way that you were always supposed to. So don't get too excited, don't go crazy fast, and enjoy the process. Thank you so much for coming. And if anyone wants to reach out, my website is sarahbrandow.com. And my specialty, obviously, is helping people thrive on plant-based diets and eat more plants and heal their gut to have their healthiest and best life. Thank you so much for coming.